You're listening to the podcast Back to the Real, and I'm your host, Marcus Tegler. Welcome to the podcast Back to the Real, the podcast that discusses how movies influences us, but also has an impact on us. Today, I'm joined by John Öwre, and the guest is Matt Tompkins, and he's here today to talk about Film Noir. Everyone ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Marcus.
Pleasure to be here.
Hey, thank you for being here, especially. And this is John's third or fourth time?
Fourth time if you count the extra material for the Halloween podcast.
Veteran status.
Marcus has promoted me to occasional sidekick, so I said I'm number 3 now.
Love having you here, and especially
likewise.
It's so much fun. It becomes engaging when we have more than 2 people here as well. So, and Matt, this is your first time here,
It is indeed.
Warm welcome.
Yeah.
So, could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
So my name's Matt Tompkins. I am a little bit out of my depth here. This is the first time I've been on a podcast that doesn't actually involve my professional expertise. Big fan, but not what I do for a living. So for work, I'm an experimental psychologist. I currently work in the cognitive science department at the University of Lund.
Mm-hmm.
My specialization is in visual attention, so a little bit of overlap with film there, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
More specifically, I study illusions, deception, and misinformation. The sort of elevator pitch for my first project, or my main project at Lund these days, is that I design and implement fake mind control technologies.
Interesting.
So I specialize in applying magic trick methods to behavioral science research.
Okay. That sounds really cool. So,
Keeps me entertained and employed.
That's always a good thing.
Yeah.
But guys, as the tradition has been so far, is that the guest decides what they want to talk about. So my question to you, Matt, is what would you like to talk about?
So John very kindly suggested that I be on this podcast because we both really enjoy watching film noir.
Oh, nice.
So we thought that would be a good topic of conversation.
Sounds like a really good suggestion. Good one, John.
He knows the genre. He's being modest.
But cool. For the listeners and viewers that may not be too much familiar with the term film noir, could you explain just in short what is film noir?
So it's a little bit of a retrospective term, and I'm going to be looking at John a little bit as well here. Yep. So it's the film's kind of emerged in the 40s, but the term noir, while the language actually originated around that time, the actual pasting a label of this is film noir didn't emerge until film critics in the 1970s started retrospectively classifying these films.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of classic a lot of it's detective stories. You can see a lot of the shapes of things like Hard Boiled and the way police procedurals kind of developed.
Yeah.
You can really trace it back, arguably, some people say, to like the idea of kind of German expressionist cinema, if you really want to go back to early origin points, the use of darkness in particularly, and the clue is in the name with the French noir.
Exactly. I was thinking with the French critics that mounted the term film noir, saying it was mainly dark movies.
But very classically kind of private detective stories, often a voiceover, often quite existential, not necessarily a happy ending, lots of betrayals, very convoluted plots. We were both talking about how we have so many movies in our head, but a lot of the plot points are fuzzy.
Yeah, we remember moods, we remember characters, we remember who framed who. But
this was part of the beat, right? Because a lot of it's set up to almost deliberately alienate the viewer, is that you've got a very tight perspective on a character who does not know what's going on, which you share as an audience as the journey, which makes for some interesting lack of memories about the details.
True. Sometimes it's part of the point.
Yeah.
The Big Sleep, a movie we both like, is very hard to follow in the moment, and it vanishes from your memory the moment you've finished watching it. There's a movie called The Lady from Shanghai, which is so incomprehensible that it's weaved into the experience of the film, that at the end you're just supposed to be... The climax actually takes place in a hall of mirrors where you completely doubt what's real.
Orson Welles' something Hall of Mirrors.
Yeah.
Great movie, though.
It's amazing, yeah.
But when we talk about film noir, are there some, like, classical elements that needs to be in a movie for it to be like a film noir movie. I know we mentioned just before recording some of the stuff, for example. You mentioned already now that almost most of the film noir, it revolves around a detective that comes to
or an everyman,
or an everyman as well. So, and it's a very dark setting. It usually is a dark environment, and the people that are the focus is on is maybe depressed and depraved, stuff like that.
I think they used to call them melodramas before they had the official label.
I think so too.
And the Americans didn't really ever think they were making noir. It was a French term. It's a European perspective on American cinema until you get to like neo-noir, when it's more of a kind of conscious artistic style.
I guess another thing, so we already mentioned The Big Sleep. A lot of these, like the early stories, kind of came out of sort of pulp detective genre. So these kind of short, kind of considered kind of garbagey literature, but I think they hold up fantastically. Personally, I quite enjoy reading them. Stories that were published in magazines.
The literary origins of the genre is clear. Like as you said, narration is very important. The stereotypical noir film will have hard-boiled narration. It's almost like it needs that prose element to feel like noir. You need to hear a male voice going, I couldn't trust a dame, but you know, like I knew I'd been framed before.
Was that your Bogart impression?
That was a very bad impression.
I think the trench coat boosted it the extra.
No, the trench coat did the job.
So why did you have to walk into my life again?
She was hot.
She was hot.
But I think we're waffling a little bit because we were talking about this a little, and we both agree that there aren't necessarily hard borders in this. It's a lot about vibes, and there's certainly elements that you see recurring over and over again, but you don't necessarily need to have all of those elements in a particular combination, I think, for people to qualify something as noir. And there's been a lot of variations. So you get like the neo-noir, where you get sort of reinterpretations of things that are outside of the traditional kind of 1940s period. You can get science fictional noir, like very classically. I know you're a Blade Runner fan.
Absolutely. I was thinking we could get into that. That would be so much fun to do. But so mainly the film noir movies, would you say, is like between the like 40s and 50s? Is the like the
I think that's kind of a lot of the official framing. I think maybe kind of towards the Touch of Evil might be.
Touch of Evil is like the canonical end. That was 58. So Maltese Falcon is usually considered the first.
That was the Bogart 41. One, not
the Bogart one. And then there are different phases. Like during World War II, they're all kind of tainted by the war. Like they're either very raw, very brutal, or they feel like vaguely propagandistic a little bit because Hollywood was part of the military industrial complex, and you know they couldn't impact morale. Then they got more reflective. By the 50s, they're very tormented and like self-loathing almost. But yeah, Touch of Evil is, I think, the one that's usually that's where it ends. It actually ends roughly around the same time that the Western ends, which is very interesting because they kind of they're parallel traditions. One is, you know, the old America where men were men and you could roam free, and the noir is the world as it actually was.
Subversions of that. And that's an interesting one, actually. Is sort of the man with no name as a character is a direct evolution of a Dashiell Hammett character who I'm not sure if he made in the same way as like the Bogart, the Sam Spade character didn't reach the same kind of like popular iconography, but the Continental Op is great. He's just these short, sort of like these weird anti-Sherlock Holmes stories where he's like, I think he's a Pinkerton agent, as Hammett actually was the author, did actually do this. And he goes around and like sort of solves crimes, but like not super competently.
But the man with no name is hyper competent.
You never know in his way, right? So he's called the Op, and you never actually know his name because in each story he has like a pocket full of business cards with fake names that he uses multiple aliases. But the story Red Harvest was adapted by Akira Kurosawa to create Yojimbo. And then Yojimbo was blatantly ripped off by Sergio Leone. I think Kurosawa actually sued him.
I think so too.
And so you can get a direct line from like the Clint Eastwood Man with No Name character to this very obscure Continental Op character that was semi-popular in these magazines.
You can definitely see it. Yeah, he is a noir protagonist.
Weird spin on the Western point.
But by that time it was like revisionist Western, so it was like started to resemble noir. Yeah,
but it's very interesting that you say from a historical perspective, because the westerns was the most dominant genre for some time, and then like you said, like the beginning of the 60s, it was starting to wear off, and then suddenly other genres, like more dramas, and stuff, it became more popular, and then the western wasn't
the classical western didn't survive the 60s, but the revisionist westerns were popular, like both the spaghetti westerns and like Sam Peckinpah ultra gory cynical westerns.
The deconstructionist subversive ones are still popping up now and again.
But no, like I think the life cycle of the golden age westerns is almost exactly the same as the age of film noir. So it really is like Hollywood split off into two parallel traditions. There were westerns in the 20s and 30s, but the really good ones began with John Ford and Stagecoach in 39. So it's like the Hollywood just branched off into these like polar opposites. I think,
But then I'm curious to know your thoughts about what do you think is so engaging with film noir?
That's a good question. I've been thinking about that. Yeah.
What is it that you enjoy when you watch those movies? Is on the top of your mind, basically?
So, I mean, tonally, they're quite fun of this sort of rejection of these hero archetypes in a way, but while also still weirdly embracing them. Like the characters are often very deeply flawed, but often, not always, but often will have this kind of underlying sense of like honor or integrity that you're supposed to perceive as an audience, that like you see they're flawed, but they're still heroic in like a very non-traditional way. For me, I enjoy kind of the mystery element. They can usually be quite consistently surprising. We already talked about this kind of alienation of kind of pushing you away from the plot. Like it's very much the opposite of like the current like streaming idea where like you should be able to be on your phone and watch it at the same time because every other scene the characters will explain to you what the previous scene was and what the plot is going to be in explicit terms. It's the antithesis of that. Where even if you're following very closely, it's kind of designed so that you are as confused as the characters, which I can understand could be annoying for some people, but I find it quite fun.
But also, I mean, at the time, they had like a loyal fan base of experts on the hardball genre who knew all the conventions. So, I mean, their like comprehension of the plot probably operated on a different level than ours do today. Today, we're just like, what the hell? Another guy with a hat, you know?
It would be like their equivalent of the Marvel Skybeam. Like they need the beats.
But what I find particularly interesting watching, we talked about one of my favorites, for example, Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. There's so many things I enjoy, especially in that movie. It has the dark approach to it, of course, with the characters and the settings, but there's what I find fascinating as well is the music in the film noir, this classical orchestra soundtrack that plays, and lots of like trumpets, and you have saxophones. That feels like it's very noir in that sense.
Vertigo has one of the best soundtracks ever.
We talked about the audio on the voiceovers, but the music definitely sets a tone.
And it's I want to claim Vertigo for my own movement romanticism. It is for me back to the source. The Bernard Herrmann score is Wagner. It is. It's Tristan. It's the whole deal. It's for me it's a deeply personal movie because that's when someone broke free of the Hollywood studio system and created high art. I will it's one of my favorite movies of old. Possibly my favorite movie of old Hollywood. From old Hollywood.
Oh, really?
Period. Yeah.
Okay.
I feel very deeply about
big
that.
Words.
Yeah. Give or take The Third Man, maybe The Night of the Hunter. All three arguably noirs, actually. Yeah.
But because I remember when I was at film studies at the university, I remember one of the movies that you had to watch, especially during that, was, like you mentioned, The Maltese Falcon. This feels like that's the pinnacle film noir.
It was the first.
It's a prototype one. But
But
there is an earlier version.
You mentioned that one.
It's a lot goofier. Do you remember what year it was?
You said 31, I think, at some point.
Yeah. I'm bad at dates.
Okay, so it's just after the silent movie era.
Yeah, so it's a big deal. It's a talkie.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have the same darkness. It's like like they clearly don't want to go with the thing I remember most about it is one of the interesting things about noir is the way that they're working around different elements of censorship at the time, particularly like the Hays Code, where you can't have any kind of explicit fornication.
No, exactly.
Just think of the children, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all sorts of very artful ways that they get around that. So like the classic is like the two characters are together, a man and woman, because it wasn't quite that progressive. And then there'd be a cut, and you might see like a static shot of like two cigarettes in an ashtray. Mm-hmm. And then the next scene, the characters might be wearing different clothing. And there's a very strong implication of what happened there, but it's enough to get by the censorship. In the original Maltese Falcon, they have a very similar idea, except instead of cutting to like cigarettes in the ashtray, it cuts to a record player, like a phonograph, and the needle skips. Ooh. And then this is in the scene that's in both movies in the book where he sleeps with Bridget O'Shaughnessy for the first time. Mm-hmm. And then you just see this shot of a record player just go for so long. And then it cuts. Like an uncomfortably long time.
I love it. This sounds really good.
Yeah. It's worth watching for the history. I'm not sure it's a great film, but
an early prototype.
It definitely sets it's a piece of history.
But cool. But okay, so like we already touched upon that the peak film noir ended in like 58. We talked about, but afterwards it feels like during the 60s and especially the 70s.
It echoes.
It echoes, exactly. And one movie I'm thinking about on the top of my mind, also from the film studies time, was Taxi Driver.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And how it like reinvented the person. You have the male, that how he observes society and as a taxi driver and the stuff that he...
Proto-incel energy. Shape of things to come.
But having that as an example, on the top of your mind, so you're thinking of other movies that have like the DNA of film noir in them from like that. Yeah.
Blade Runner was a really good one if we want to go weird with it. Who Framed Roger Rabbit has come up.
That's almost straight up a film noir.
I mean, so there's an interesting story there. I'm not super clear on the details, but the screenwriters who wound up working on Who Framed Roger Rabbit had previously been working on like a third Chinatown movie. So elements of that script, which never got off the ground for various scandalous reasons, made it into the Who Framed Roger Rabbit film.
Yeah,
which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Because there is a book. It's technically based on a book, but they go completely off the rails with the plot in the film.
Yeah.
And the plot details are supposed to be Chinatown 3.
Because tonally, I think it offers a form of more realism as well. Because you mentioned, for example, the code.
Well, not Roger Rabbit.
Not Roger Rabbit. No, exactly. But thinking of like Taxi Driver, like mentioned Chinatown. When the production code disappeared in 68, I think, then suddenly movies became a bit more gruesome, more violent, and you could have more blood, for example. But thing like you said,
for better or for worse.
For better or for worse, exactly. I'm thinking of, it's like you said, with Chinatown, especially the famous scene with
Polanski with the knife and the
exactly. But do you think that was beneficial for the movies, especially when it becomes?
I think it depends on how you define the genre. Because
I think not having censorship is good, though.
Sure, yeah, but there was also a lot of art that emerged from having to.
Yeah, from the constraints.
Yeah. I think if we talk about Taxi Driver, for example, Taxi Driver did such a perfect job exploring the psychology of a alienated male loner that you almost couldn't go back to Sam Spade or anything after that. It was just, Travis Bickle, after that, that was the benchmark. I mean, you couldn't romanticize that type of person to the same extent. I don't know if it's been done without... in a way that isn't really tongue-in-cheek since then.
Okay.
But, I mean, I feel like there were also efforts at like the subversion. So we were talking about like the kind of the post-war time period. Things like Mickey Spillane, Kiss Me Deadly.
Kiss Me Deadly,
Right, where like that is they don't really give you many hints that he's a redeemable character.
No.
Mike Hammer, that's the guy.
Kiss Me Deadly is, academics love that movie. I've never been... It's a B movie. The craftsmanship is so-so.
I like their depiction of the nuclear bomb quite a lot.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's the one thing.
Which was also Tarantino's suitcase inspiration.
It's a suitcase
for
in
Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. I can't get over the mechanic going va va boom. It's just like it has all these silly elements, and then it becomes incredibly gruesome by the end.
But yeah, I see what you mean, like about Taxi Driver being like almost an end point of this, where they're kind of flirting with this idea of subverting hero narratives and putting these male protagonists on a pedestal. And Noir kind of shakes the pedestal a bit, but Taxi Driver just gives it a solid kick.
My thoughts exactly. Because then you mentioned, for example, Roger Rabbit, but that turns it into more like a fun, like a love letter to that time and era, and do it in a very beautiful way as well, in a fun way as well. So
the effects in that hold up.
They still do.
That's it. For kids, Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a very dark movie.
I think I'm still traumatized from two scenes
by Dr. Doom.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember
and the shoe that gets into.
Shoe,
Yep.
I was horrified seeing that for the first time.
But it's interesting because it's the right time to teach children about the irony of children's entertainment. Like in terms of content, it's totally uncynical. It's about teaching children's life lessons. Well, I mean, debatable, but at least at its best, it can be very pure and idealistic. But it comes from the most cynical place in the world, and I think that movie it explores that dichotomy very well in the portrayal of the toons, because they're all recognizable as cartoons. But at the same time, they also feel like these exploited Hollywood talent geniuses. They're all quite nuts. they're quite scary. Like even Donald Duck and Daffy Duck, when they turn, like Mickey Mouse straight up tries to murder the protagonist. And it's just they have this almost like prankster, trickster sensibility where you're kind of scared of them, but you also want to protect them. I don't know. It's quite a sophisticated
The uncanny use there is quite sophisticated.
And, no, I like the movie. It works as a noir. It's a straight up conventional noir. And it's been often imitated, never really equaled. Like,
I know, but it's such a cool thing to think about when you have like a certain time where you have these movies that are like a source, and then you find the elements
archetypal.
Exactly. But thinking of now when we're approaching more the present, just like you have the 70s, but then also the 80s. It feels like there was a revival not just in movies but also like in TV. Many refer, for example, Miami Vice. They call it neon noir, for example. You're having the detective in Miami. You have these society, and especially do work as police officers in Miami during the 80s.
GTA, which I assume is going to have a lot of that DNA in it.
And everything Michael Mann has ever done is kind of in that vein. Yeah,
exactly.
Because he also did the TV series.
Yes, exactly.
One of the creators. Yeah,
and he feels like he's a director that has been influenced much from film noir, the stories that he does in the movies. You touched on a subject I find also very interesting when you talked about, for example, Blade Runner, when you suddenly turn it into science fiction. And you're having the main character, he's a detective in future LA, trying to hunt down some replicants, like the antagonists in the movie. And then the setting in a very, very dark LA. Most of the people have fled from Earth or off-world colonies, and it's just the dark, depraved, depressing parts that are still left there. And so to me, that I found very, very fascinating. And then you had like the elements, you have the voiceover. I just mentioned it is the theatrical version. The director's cut, it's not available. But then you had the voiceover from Harrison Ford talking about the job and his personal life, what he was experiencing. And then the setting and the characters he runs into. Sean Young as Rachel, the femme fatale, and so on.
So it's got all the beats, but with this fantastical sci-fi veneer over top of it.
Absolutely. And how that also in itself created a subgenre within the film noir as well, as a storytelling device.
And it's interesting the way that because the filmic elements of that are I mean, at best implied by the Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep short story, which is kind of pulpy, but it doesn't take it to the same explicit level, to my memory, as the film does with the visual iconography and the, like you said, the voiceover and different things, depending on which version you're.
Yeah. No, but like cyberpunk as a genre is an offshoot from noir. I mean, it's noir.
A solid argument. Yeah.
Technology. Yeah. Even something like The Matrix has noir elements. Yeah.
But can you, we were talking about just before the recording as well, how some movies are still being made that like, I wouldn't say glorify, but they, it's like an appreciation for the setting and the type of movies. We were talking about Damnation Alley, for example.
Nightmare Alley.
Nightmare Alley. Sorry, so with the Damnation, it was a fake. Sorry, but
I mean, it does end in damnation. Aside from the Tyrone Power one, does have a stapled on ending.
But then Del Toro does this enormously beautiful movie, in my opinion. It was extremely well shot, and they very captured it extremely well. The set design, the characters, the mood in general, very, very dark as well.
So this one is very much we're getting actually close to my professional expertise here, because the story is about fraudulent mediumship, where it's the guy who is down on his luck and starts working in a carnival, learns to do some fake mind reading, spiritualist tricks, and then starts his own religion. And then rises up and then has a very noirish downfall. Also an evil psychologist as the femme fatale. So
it's true.
Ticks a lot of boxes for me. But that's one of my favorites, actually, because I think the book in itself, the William Lindsay Gresham is, I believe, the author. So he wrote a novel of it, which became a movie, I think, within like less than 2 years of the novel being published, which was the Tyrone Power one. Which was quite good. The novel is extremely dark in ways that they could not produce in a film at that point, to the point where they have like a very bleak downer ending in the story, which Del Toro, to his credit, brought back. But in the intervening movie, they just have a thing where like, so they have that scene, and then there's like this weird, horrible epilogue, or lovely epilogue. I guess it depends on how much, your mileage may vary, where he meets like the good female character, and she rescues him from what would have otherwise been the dark fate that he is definitely getting in all other versions of the story.
Exactly.
It's an interesting, period piece. Speaking of the censorship and other things and what they could and couldn't.
True. But that's also a thing that I've been thinking about for our conversation here as well. Looking at not just movies, but also TV series. Now, one TV series that I was thinking about that feels very inspired by the film noir was True Detective.
Oh, yeah.
As honorable mention. But thinking like, also you have main character, they have a crimes that they have to solve, and then the way they do it, and especially it's extremely dark settings, and the characters are not that optimistic and positive, really.
And it even plays around with, so because one of the tensions when you start trying to apply noir definitions, which I think we all agree is not necessarily a great idea, is like, is the person like an independent, like some sort of private, are they outside of a traditional kind of like authority complex? And so some people would argue that that's an important thing for noir, and I do think it's a factor. But there it's kind of interesting, because the way you've got that timeline jump is they start out being police officers, but then in the later timeline that's running in parallel, they are kind of independent. So it kind of ticks both of those boxes in an interesting way.
True. No, I completely agree with you. I might be on a line here, but I was also thinking that one of my favorite directors, Christopher Nolan, for example, the earlier movies he did, for example, with both Memento, Insomnia, and those kinds, I feel like they're very, very inspired by that kind of. You have the tormented man, the main character, and
the pre-blockbustery ones.
Yes,
and frankly, his Batman trilogy, like The Dark Knight in particular.
I agree. So to me, it's very fascinating and interesting how it still resonates today. It lives on, and in many different shapes and forms as well. Do you have any thoughts about where you can see like film noir inspiration coming like further on? What would you like to see like in future movies or in TV that you think like that this hasn't been done before?
So this is this is old now because I'm old. I can't remember exactly when this came out, but like I think it was Rian Johnson's like sort of debut big movie, Brick, which is a really interesting. So that's one of my favorite things to see actually. You see, we can also talk about The Big Lebowski in a second, but both of those with the Coen brothers and with Johnson, like you see this where it almost could be parody, like it's right up until the edge of parody. But if you're watching it, there's a very tangible reverence to the source material, even if they're playing around and subverting. Brick, of course, is like, it's got the voiceover. It's like, it's goofy in a way, but not in like a mean poking fun at like quite comedic way of like, it's a high school student who's going through all the tropes of like a washed out, like war veteran private investigator from the 40s. And it's set in the 90s, I think.
Actually haven't seen it, I will confess.
Yeah, but it's a modern day at the time high school student going through all of the tropes within a high school setting. You have all the archetypal characters as like teenagers and just playing around in that world. So that was a fun twist. 2049 Blade Runner as well was one of my favorite contemporary movies for the past few years. Yeah, I agree. So that was, we were talking about this a little earlier. I can't think of other examples of this, but there definitely have been. That was one of those movies where I saw that like maybe the day, maybe the week it premiered. And I immediately called up a buddy of mine who was one of the people that I got into Film Noir with. We both had like a university course back in New York that we took a film class in. And I called him, I'm like, Aaron, you absolutely need to see this movie. This movie is perfect. It's like someone wrote it for us. Also, that means it's going to be a massive commercial failure because we are not a good commercial target audience. Like, I appreciated it, but like,
it's so sad because it was praised of critics, and
they gave him money to make a Dune movie, so he's doing okay.
Yeah, true. That's true. That's actually true. But we have to mention as well. You mentioned Big Lebowski because that feels like such one of the biggest cult.
This guy was almost here in a bathrobe.
Matt saved me last minute.
That would be nice to see you in the bathrobe.
But that's another, like, that also, like, so in particular, like, the scene where, I forget the actor's name, where he gets stopped by the actual private investigator who's following him.
John Polito.
Yes. Yeah. So the characters in that movie think that movie is the plot of Red Harvest, except for the dude. And it's this kind of, like, stoner noir where, again, it's making jokes out of a lot of these things, and they are genuinely funny in my opinion. But
I like the term stoner noir.
Yeah. Well, it's like we were also talking about Inherent Vice, which is like acid noir.
No, there's a tradition there.
Pick your psychoactive framework.
No, I mean, there is a tradition. It starts with The Long Goodbye by Robert Altman, 1973, which is based on a Raymond Chandler novel. But the idea is that noir, once you get into the counterculture, you can't have that genre the way it looked like. With the type of like inquisitive mind that would become an investigator would, in this time period, would get stoned or experiment with drugs and hang out and like that type of culture. So you get this
counterculture had evolved.
So it's almost like a reverse trajectory to what happened with the Westerns. The Westerns become very gritty, very nihilistic. Noir kind of lightens up a little bit.
In some ways,
much more comical. So The Long Goodbye has this incredibly like timid protagonist whose name is Philip. It is Philip Marlowe.
It's Philip Marlowe,
but he is chronically hungover. He just walks around going, it's fine with me. Completely non-confrontational. He's just really passive pretty much until the end. And then The Big Lebowski kind of takes that ball and runs with it even further. So they create this dude character who's literally the last person in the universe who's competent to solve that case. And it's like he's one type of 60s person.
I mean, he doesn't know he's working a case. Really.
He doesn't know. No, well,
he
eventually,
just wants to rub back.
He can't keep track of details. And then you have his sidekick, Walter. John Goodman, who is another counterculture figure, but he's the PTSD suffering combat veteran who's just totally unequipped to deal with the case for another reason. No, but it has a long tradition. It is, The Long Goodbye. You have Arthur Penn's Night Moves, another great 70s noir. The Big Lebowski, and then Inherent Vice, which that's another movie that just came and went. I mean, I thought we've talked a little bit about that, but I think that's
a masterpiece in my opinion as well. Yeah.
I think the book holds up really nicely as well. Nice. Like I have a lot of trouble. We were just saying this as well. Like I have a lot of trouble with Pynchon. I like Pynchon a lot. I bounced off Gravity's Rainbow. I don't even know how many times now, but I was able to get through Inherent Vice no problem because it's the most accessible. Yeah.
But
Crying in Lot 49.
Crying also it's short.
Yeah, it's a big one.
There can't be too many conspiracies. No, but Inherent Vice I like because it keeps Pynchon's style, but it also colors it with other things. Because for me, Thomas Pynchon, I respect his work, and some of his books I really love. But at some point, the more weird names and conspiracies and like kooky details emerge, the more it just becomes kind of language. It's just like you're just grappling with language that's veering off in different directions. Yeah, exactly. Trillions of names. You've forgotten who they all were. Whereas Inherent Vice takes that, but it adds a kind of very physical dimension. I mean, with Joaquin Phoenix, when he's introduced, he's lying on a sofa, he's sort of staring out through a window, and we see him in a very sort of reflective mood. It's like warm light from the kitchen coming up from behind, and then the blue light from the outside coming in. It's like it adds this sort of poetic sensory element to Pynchon that just makes me go, oh, there's a world here. Like this is it has materiality. And I think it's a moving film. Like at the end of it, when they're all trying to hold on to this counterculture spirit that maybe never existed, and even at the time, and everyone's a police officer or a sellout or a yuppie.
Yeah, shout out to Josh Brolin's.
Josh Brolin is amazing.
An honorable mention for the restaurant scene, particularly. It's hilarious.
Josh Brolin is perfect. Yeah.
He's a Bjornsson. Is he supposed to be a Swede?
Bigfoot Bjornsson. He's a Swede.
Yeah. Why not?
I'm guessing the Sean Penn character in the movie we're going to watch tonight, the two of us are watching one battle after another, is going to be the DNA of Bigfoot Bjornsson.
Speaking of those echoes, yeah. Could well be.
So, love it. Just on top of my mind, when we were talking about when you make fun of it, there was a remake of not remake, but reboot of the Naked Gun.
We were talking about that on the bus ride over here.
Yeah, me too. But I think like with the Leslie Nielsen versions, and then now with Liam Neeson, I have the same like DNA in it as well.
But I was skeptical because they're not interchangeable. Like Leslie Nielsen is totally like unfazed by everything that's happening. Liam Neeson always looks kind of sad and thoughtful and mournful.
Just constantly phased.
Yeah. So I was just like, this isn't gonna work. It's not the same vibe. But then I watched it and it works just as well. It's just like the idea of him looking like he's doing Shakespeare when he's like just saying the dumbest things. It's just,
I like to think amazing. It was discipline, but just like the fact that like his character at no point weaks to camera.
Yeah,
it's just straight all the way through.
True,
and it's just it's that same where again like the airplane kind of writing of like the amount of jokes
and the amount of jokes that land.
Great ratio.
I totally agree, but it feels like many movies that still, if it's a comedy, if it's a drama, if it's a thriller, so they still have some part of the DNA from the film noir, especially in its vein, and I find that so fun and fascinating at the same time, and especially visual styles as well when you do the movies.
And it's like Easter eggs as well, where like if you don't know that it's there, it's not going to diminish your experience, but it does have a potential to dial up the experience that extra notch or two, depending on how into it you are, and that's something I really appreciate in filmmaking. That those little subtle touches that. You don't need that to understand what's going on or enjoy yourself, but you can add a little extra depth to it.
True.
And I think a lot of the neo-noir stuff, like the Coen brothers, for example, like you can watch The Big Lebowski and have never seen any of those movies, and it's still a fun movie. But if you have seen those things...
True.
Really plays around with narration as well. That's the most long-winded narrator ever. He's just like loses his train of thought 3 minutes in and we're like, just quits the movie.
Bring him back at the end.
But it's fun when we talk about, especially you mentioned that Paul Thomas Anderson, and we mentioned Del Toro, we mentioned Christopher Nolan, Denis Villeneuve, for example, as well. I feel all of these directors feel like they have been inspired from movies from that time, and especially the tone, the setting, the storytelling, and which I find very cool.
But it is almost the most American of genres. It's like that and the Western, and today noir probably has more appeal to like contemporary people. Western, not to me, but I like both equally. But because noir, I mean, it almost has to be American on some. Like there are some border cases where the third man is always a little bit on the line because it's a British film. Diabolique, yeah, but is that like classic noir?
Circling back to this thing we said we were going to
do. Noir is a European perspective on America on some level. So maybe if it's a very Americanized film, but and it has to. I mean, I think an urban environment is more noir than a small town, wouldn't you say?
Sure.
Yeah. So something like The Night of the Hunter, which takes place in the South, the countryside. It doesn't. Yeah, it's not. It's sometimes listed as one of the greatest noirs ever made, and I love that movie. But I wouldn't consider it noir exactly. It's a little too Protestant, rural and fanciful to be noir for me. Yeah.
I hear you. Although speaking of this, is a quick side thought. Speaking of like the cities, so I was in San Francisco for work a year ago, and that's where the Maltese Falcon is set. That's where Hammett lived, and they have like a history plaque, like, and they're like, this is where John Archer got shot. Like it's the same thing as like the historic buildings. Like, so they have this like little blue plaque for like a fictional character's imaginary death. Just in this random alley where in the book it does happen. And I think in the film as well. But I don't even know if they shot it there. It's just like where it takes place in the story.
That's great. I mean, they also, Vertigo was also shot in San Francisco. And they make it, you can go to the house where, all the locations of Vertigo.
Yeah, often the city is a character.
It is. And typically it's Los Angeles. But
I would say like a shout out on Instagram and on Facebook as well. There's a group called Historic Film Locations. If you're familiar with those, then there were many like film noir movies that like you mentioned now when people go and take a shot of themselves for like in San Francisco. It feels like it's very popular that the imagery, especially the setting and everything, it seems like it's very important to many people to see where it's been shot, especially. And I like that very much.
I enjoyed it when I was there.
But just very briefly talk about, like we talked about in the 40s, for example, it was classified as like a melodrama because I think like especially during the 40s we were having the World War going on. Think like and then you had of course the musicals as well, but it didn't have maybe taken the footing as later on. But having those movies with everything going on in the world feels like it was a bit depressing genre, but it was so successful. And so why that was?
That's quite mysterious. It clearly worked as escapism, even though it was also the genre that was probably the most true to life, because realism didn't really exist in Hollywood in the same way. But it's strange because you mentioned it has roots in like existentialism. It's typically about an absurd random universe, but somehow Dostoevsky isn't escapism, but noir is.
Well, also Dostoevsky you usually get rescued by like a Christian prostitute who converts you and everything's cool.
True.
The rock doesn't necessarily roll back down the hill every time.
But that just makes noir even darker and more hopeless. I don't know. Maybe it's just like the allure of the seediness. It's like it's the promise, some criminal underworld, some violence, some beautiful women. I don't know. Because it had market appeal.
Yeah, I guess it's also this sort of like pseudo-realism where it's still fantastical, but it creates this, certainly in contrast to more heroic stories, this idea that like this is the real stuff. It is not the real stuff by any stretch of the imagination, but it creates this sense of more real than some of the things that stand in contrast to it. I think I'm not that kind of psychologist nor a sociologist, but that would be the off the top of my head guess.
No, but I mean particularly after the war, for combat veterans coming home from the war and not being able to adjust to society, there's a parallel to the noir protagonist who knows violence. He understands masculinity and hardness, but everyone kind of fears him. He is always he's alone, he's self-destructive. I can see why there would be an audience for that, particularly after the war. Because, there's also...
It plays around with the kind of consistent sense of alienation.
Yeah.
Like it's what flavor of that is it going to be based on what's going on?
True.
Maybe be a way of thinking about it.
True. It was a very interesting point you made. Yeah. But cool. So, but guys, we can talk about this subject for like hours and hours. But I'm very curious to see if you could list like your top 3 movies, you would say, from the film noir. It can be. It doesn't have to be like for the 40s and 50s. It can be like the newer ones as well. What would you rank as your top 3? If you can start with you, John.
Okay, so classical noir. I think The Third Man. I will count that as a full-on noir. I love that movie. It's so many dimensions. It's also a strange case because it's constructed like a comedy, but it isn't a comedy. It's an extremely dark film. It's Orson Welles plays a horrible monster of a human being who sells diluted penicillin on the black market in Vienna and kills children and everything. So it's brutal, but something about the film is makes, if you think about the Zither soundtrack and the way all these comic elements makes you feel like there's a kind of a joke going on, but no one's quite getting
farcical.
It's a bit farcical, but in almost like cosmic way, because there's this American protagonist coming to Vienna. He doesn't understand anything that's going on. There are all these aristocrats, scheming on it. There's this very compelling sense of him walking around in a huge joke that he's the only one who doesn't understand what's going on. A bit of a critique about like American administration of the conquered Axis nations and his sort of bumbling incompetence. But I love that movie. If I would recommend it to just about anyone. That would be my top choice, even though it's not a stereotypical noir.
Cool.
Yeah. I think one of my top ones, and I'm not very good at favorites, it's a very fluid concept, but right now, in this moment, I would say Billy Wilder's Double Indemnity would be one of my top.
I almost guessed you would say that,
Yeah. Billy Wilder is such an incredible... I haven't even seen everything that he's done, but like the breadth of that guy's work is... I can't really think of anything super comparable.
No.
But that's just, it's got the voiceover, it's the plotting is so tight visually, it ticks all these boxes with the music, the Venetian blinds. It's a little bit of an offbeat in the fact that he's like an insurance claims investigator, which is slightly, but it is very much outside this sort of traditional authority of, and it's one of my favorite movies ever, the way they set up the crime, the way you see everything start to unravel. The ending with the lighting the cigarette and that sort of reversal of character roles. And also just the Keen, I forget the name of the actor who plays who's effectively the antagonist. Like he's his friend who's the other. I think so.
The guy who
the little
is with
guy.
Him at the end.
He as like the sort of actual detective character who's trying to solve the crimes being committed by the protagonist is such like that relationship dynamic is so amazing. We were throwing shade on Dostoevsky, but that Raskolnikov and the investigator relationship is so great.
No, that's one of my favorites as well. And Billy Wilder, as you say, he won at comedy, he won at film noir,
all the things.
I love him as well. I really like a film called In a Lonely Place, starring Humphrey Bogart. It was by a director who was maybe lesser known in America at the time, named Nicholas Ray, but he was always the favorite of the French critics who wrote about film noir because, he made some really silly movies like a Western called Johnny Guitar, which which is one of... It's a critical darling, but I always thought it was like very campy. But In a Lonely Place is fantastic. It's about a Hollywood screenwriter who gets obsessed with a case to the point where his creative interest in criminal psychology makes everyone treat him like a criminal because he basically reveals that he has the same type of mind. And he never does anything amoral in the film, but at the end, he is just rejected by everyone, even his wife. Everyone looks at him like he's a complete monster. I don't know. It does a very good... It feels like a very reflective noir about the type of person who would produce this type of film.
Big old alienation check.
Very much so, yeah. That would be one of my... But I would, if I could have Double Indemnity, I would have put that as my second. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, let's see if I can deviate slightly out of the past.
Oh yeah, I like that.
I don't recognize that one.
It's with
Robert Mitchum. Hang My Gallows High is the novel that it's based on.
French director.
Yeah,
Jacques
blanking. Yeah. But again, it's got this. It's in terms of like almost a Camus style existentialist parable, but with all of the trimmings.
Okay.
Private investigator character. It also does some interesting time jump stuff, which was quite unusual at the time. Beautiful film. Not the most accessible necessarily.
I see.
But if you're into this kind of thing, then it will absolutely be. And it's like, it's sometimes considered like critically one of the
it's one of
all
the
time.
big ones. Yeah.
But it doesn't have the same cachet as like a Maltese Falcon or but that one's up there for me. I actually have a big poster of that in my office.
Okay, so we don't have the classical noirs. Maybe we should end with a neo-noir.
Go weirder.
Or I can even toss in before the film noir. I was thinking of the inspiration for film noir, the German expressionism, M. Alsmörder.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Peter Lorre. It's such an amazing movie.
Who's also the somewhat similar villain in the Maltese Falcon.
Exactly. But
him as a character actor, man.
I mean, he was amazing. He was Arsenic and Old Lace, but it's a completely different movie. But very dark, but it's still extremely funny. But I see the inspiration where the movies got from, especially from that movie, especially because it's pure dark, basically, and at the time as well, in the beginning of the 30s, the dark time in Europe and especially the world, and having that topic about a child killer basically roaming around in the streets in Germany. To me, it's one of my favorites. I would be honorable mention if I can use that.
Yeah. Sustained.
I'm thinking there was kind of a revival of noir in the 90s, where, to return to one of our favorite decades, where they were all, I've sometimes thought about how it turned into kind of a red genre for a while. And it was something about the film stock or the fact that movies in the 90s were often shot at sunset, where everyone's skin looks kind of red and there's red lighting and everything. So I like to think of it as the red, the film rouge, like evolution of the genre.
I like that, film rouge.
And there were a few movies. There's one called The Last Seduction, which I've seen it. Yeah, it's really good. It's told from a female perspective. A deeply unpleasant lead character, a standard femme fatale, very cleverly plotted, very well acted.
But the perspective shift.
No, it's been a while since I saw it, but I remember it's very haunting. It's very, it's dark, but the darkness is quite implicit. It's a movie with a lot of soft touches. You hear it in the soundtrack. It's like, that would be a recommendation.
Cool.
I guess we've already talked about both of them, but I guess my third one would maybe be a tie with very different, The Big Lebowski and Nightmare Alley.
But those are also very great movies, I would say. So, and especially still to this day, especially Big Lebowski, how the dude has been cemented into our consciousness and especially pop culture as well. The character of the dude, especially Jeff Bridges.
Thanks to Jeff Bridges, that's
iconic.
Yeah. Also, John Goodman is also iconic.
And credit for Steve Buscemi as well.
Shut the fuck up, Donnie.
No, but the way jokes just. I mean, you can notice jokes on the 10th viewing of that movie that you hadn't noticed before.
I mean, now that we're thinking, I feel like everybody in that movie is just at like 10 or 11, like Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Philip Seymour Hoffman is hilarious. Julianne Moore is great. The guy who plays the actual Big Lebowski.
But don't forget Peter Stormare.
Peter Stormare and the German guy.
With the album Nagelbett.
And John Turturro.
John Turturro, obviously,
Who apparently there's talk about he apparently has permission to make a spin-off of that character. He has made it? Wait,
yes, it's called The Jesus Bowls.
Wow.
Wait, can we watch it? Where is it?
It got savaged by critics. And I can see it. It's the kind of thing where you need the right touch. Yeah. There's that, and there's also like an unauthorized film called The Big Lebowski 2, which I think was made by the girl who plays Bunny. What's her name?
Blanking.
The blank.
Yeah, but also there have been spin-offs. I don't think if we don't have if we can't have the Coen brothers involved, maybe not. Yeah,
but rumor is they're making movies together again.
Allegedly, yeah. There's talk of a horror movie.
We have to look into this after the recording here. But no, especially when you mentioned Jeff Bridges, he also did like a couple of years ago commercials as his character, the dude as well, and how it still is so popular and resonates today.
It works.
So,
apparently based on a real person who is not nearly as charming as the actual dude. Yeah.
There is nobody more charming than Jeff Bridges, especially when he's the dude. Guys, thank you so much for doing this. And
Thanks for having me.
I would love to have you back again. And John is my steady sidekick.
As many times as you'll have me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching the podcast. If you enjoyed what you were watching, please remember to hit like and subscribe. It helps me with the channel and it helps me create more content. See you next time.
Thank you.